Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Covenant Keepers. Give me a moment here to turn down the music and turn me up. I don't remember. There we go. Now you should be able to hear me. I didn't have my volume on. I'm so sorry. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Metropolitan Community Church of Baltimore's Covenant Keepers. Today we're going to talk about the covenant of generosity. And if I could ask my partner who's on camera on Zoom with me today to join in. It's Saturday morning, and we all know that we want to take our time and sleep in even though we have other things to do. I know I didn't want to get up this morning, and I've already been out to one appointment. This is number 2 for the day. So God does keep you busy when you're busy. First, if you'll join me for prayer. Heavenly Parent, we just thank you and we praise you. We ask that you be with us today as we discuss your business and your teachings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, if you give me one moment, I got one more thing I got to do, and I'm never good and coordinated with this. So give me 1 second here. There we go. Now I got myself, I think, together. Notice how I worded that, I think. There we go. I got to get my messages in Facebook, and I had to pin them in too, so I apologize. I'm not always well coordinated here. So this morning, we're going to talk about generosity. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you what generosity means to you, because generosity is different things for different people. So, Minister Ray, what does generosity mean to you?
I believe that generosity is taking the time to give of one's. Had an old coworker who used to say, supervisor used to say, your time, your talent, and your treasure. So taking the time to give those to people. And I want to add, maybe to give those things to people that you wouldn't necessarily.
Ray, your volume went away. I'm making sure it's not me. Nope. Okay. So generosity, for me, means I'm giving of myself, like Minister Ray said, of my time, my talent, my treasure. But not necessarily one has priority over the other, because there are times when I don't have a lot of treasure in my pocket. I think that we can all agree with that. Sometimes we have things that take priority over others. And when I think of generosity, I don't just think of cash. I think of other things because to give you an example, this week I had to put my one cat to sleep. He had some health issues that we knew we could manage, but we, while we were at the vet, they were very generous. They were generous with their time. They were generous with their care of us. They were very caring. They showed us, they gave us the time to be with Thomas as we said goodbye. They were there and they showed us that they cared. And sometimes that's a very important part of generosity, is just letting people know that you care. And that meant a lot to us. So the other thing is generosity, when we give it, does have a return, and we may not always know how we affect another, because I know those ladies weren't, they were just trying to be nice, but it really helped us get through that hard time for us that night. there anything else you'd like to say about generosity?
You struck something when you said not getting it back in return. Sometimes your generosity will not be reciprocated, and that's okay. In a way that the person or the being that you give to might not be able to give it back to you, and that's okay. Um, I think at some point you use your discernment to think, am I being too generous and being used? But I think we all should have generosity. We all do have generosity. It's just in different forms, and our return is the blessings that we get. That's a return. So we might not have a tangible return, but we'll have blessings that could be tangible.
Right. And I think sometimes in the church, especially, we forget that generosity doesn't always have a return. That sometimes we just have to be generous. And Minister Ray also, I want to piggyback on what she said about sometimes generosity can be taken advantage of, where sometimes because you are giving, people think that you need to continue to give, and just it's becomes an expectation and not a gift from that person. And you have to be careful with that because the only person who can control your generosity is yourself. Um, you get to set, you have the opportunity to say how much time you want to give, how much talent you want to give, how much treasure you want to give. That's all your own individual call. You don't, I can't place my expectations on Minister Ray. And I think we saw that in our Lenten Bible study series with un, um, unmanageable expectations, where you can't place an unmanageable expectation on yourself or on others. And I think that sometimes in the church, we tend to do that. We tend to think that, oh, you've become a member, now you have to show up at this and this and this, and you have to give your 10%. And oh, you can sing, you have a lovely voice, you have to get up and sing every Sunday. Oh, you write poetry. Oh, you do spoken word. No, that's not being generous to, for the church to you, or even for you to the church, because at some point you're going to get burned out. Your little match is just going to run out, and you're going to be like, never mind. I don't need to go there anymore. They want all my money. Every Every time I turn around, the church is telling me we need to do this. Oh, the pastor wants to go on vacation. We got to get money. Oh, they need a new roof. Oh, the fire alarm system doesn't work. We need sprinklers. Oh, we need new paraments for the altar. The bills could go on and on, and the requests can go on and on, but you also have to take care of yourself. And I think that for me is a key part of generosity. The first person you have to be generous to is yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't do all that God wants you to do. And I think we forget that. I think we forget that we have to take care of ourselves and we have to be generous to ourselves first. Um, I love it when Milton would do the offering moment, and he would get up and say, you know, if you have $10, we're just asking for one. But guess what? If you didn't pay the electric bill, I want that dollar to go pay your electric bill before you give it to the church. But if you're going to use that dollar to go to the movies, well, then you can give it to the church. Maybe we're going to have a movie at church. Once we get back in the building, we have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. We've even done, oh my gosh, we've done so much on Zoom and Facebook that I'm amazed at what we've done during the past year. I believe you can agree with me, Minister Ray. Oh yeah. We've had a church party on Zoom online. We have our Bible studies. We have our chat and two, intercessory prayer, worship service. We have training sessions. I'm so used to seeing the ministers and the pastors and the core leaders on Zoom that it's not my weekend if I don't get to see them on Zoom anymore. Um, and so, and but the other catch is once you get into church and once you get into becoming a member, don't think you have to join everything because we want you to be there for the long run. You're going to be that match and you're going to light and you're going to be really bright, but we want you to last. I don't want you that little match, that little paper match that's about this long. I want that one that they light the fireplace with that's about that long that's going to last. And you never get to use the whole thing before you shake it out, before you put the flame on it out because you just don't need it that long. But I want you to be that long match.
Minister, oh,
Yes, ma'am.
no, Minister, I was going to say, I know sometimes when people, when we join a new church, we feel like we have to be in everything. So I think it's okay to, put your feelers out and check out, whatever groups. But if there's one that you're really passionate about, yes, focus on that, and you'll be you can be so much more generous, of your time if you don't spread yourself too thin. And another thing is, I think sometimes when people join the church, they feel like they can't say no to something. Like you were saying, oh, you can sing, you're going to sing every week. Like sometimes, take that time and say no, because you can't be your best self. You can't be your most generous and best self if you are spread too thin.
That is true. I think our Pastor Bernice said it this week in Bible study. She said, no is a one-word sentence. And no is something that you can use. You don't have to say yes to everything. Um, and we do want you to try the ministries out, but we don't want you to burn yourself out. Um, I know when I joined, I wanted to try it. I was a new person. I wanted to try everything. But then I realized some things like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be one of those people who's going to get up and dance. And Minister Lee is on Facebook watching us, and he says, you can't be all things to all people. And that is very true. We are not God. We are human beings, and we have limitations. We make mistakes. We have errors. We do things wrong. And we can't be, even the church can't be all things to all people. And that goes with the unmanageable expectations that we talked about in Bible study. See how everything connects? That's why we have these little classes because all of it's interconnected. Uh, Ms. Ray, did you want to say something? You can just butt in. You can leave your mic
Oh,
open.
no. I was just going to say about, oh, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Um, about you saying that when you came to the church, you were in everything. And I think I was like the exact opposite, where I didn't do anything. I came in, I was, spoke to everyone, but I didn't join any group. So it's possible, but I think we definitely all should be involved. And, it took me a little bit of time, but I'm involved in many things now. So, which whatever you're comfortable with doing, but I think that people should definitely put their feelers out and just see what each group is doing and see where where you fit in. At your own pace when you're most comfortable, especially we've been talking about in Bible study with the church hurt and things like that. If you have come from a place where you weren't celebrated or affirmed, then you might have to sit and just sit and watch for a while.
Um, I agree. And I think that, what is it? I love the scenario where you come in and you sit on the back row, and then the next Sunday, oh, well, I'm a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to move up about 3 rows. Oh, now I'm a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to move up a couple more rows. And I started out on the back pew. I think it took me like 3 months to get to the front row. And now it's like if I'm not up front, I feel like I'm missing something. I don't want to be in the back anymore. Um,
Minister Mel, Tanya says that she likes that you can join the church as a friend. You
oh,
know, and you still can be involved in a part of ministries, even as a friend.
yes, that's something unique and special to Metropolitan Community Churches. I've never had a church. I've never been to another church where they had that, where you can be a friend of the church, where you can say, "I want to be a part of the ministries. I want to interact, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to join." And that's another way of being generous, even though you're not a member. Um, there's a lot of different ways available to give generously, and we have a lot of folks. We have several people who I can think of off the top of my head who are friends of the church, but because of different things that have occurred in their life, they're not comfortable with joining a church, but yet they show up every Sunday when we're open. And I'm like going, well, why don't you just join? No, I can't do that. They come to Bible study. Why don't you just, no, I can't do that. And well, you keep saying you're learning and you're getting freed of old things, but nah, I'm not ready to do that. And they've been doing this for 2 years. So it's a type of church generosity because the church can be generous too. It can offer you different things. It can be more understanding. Um, Generosity is reciprocal, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be. I think that's what we've been saying. Um, but yes, when you come to church, you're expecting certain things from the church too, as far as generosity is concerned. And just because you don't always get that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily the right fit. Um, just like ministries, you have to try the churches out too. Um, so we've we've actually had a nice little discussion here about what we think generosity is, and as you can see, it's different. It's going to be different for different people, and even different given different situations. Because Minister Ray talked about how she's in a lot of things, and when she first came, I can remember when she first came, she sat in the back, and she stayed there for a long time. And yeah, I'm showing how long I've been at the church. I can remember when most of them came. Uh, and when I came, I tried everything. I went to Bible study. I went to intercessory prayer. I went to um, Saturday classes. I went to everything, and I just oh I can be me and join all this and learn and after a while I had to slow down because I realized I didn't need to do it. I didn't. Every time somebody was there at the church, even pulling out the vacuum, I was there too, and I was like, well, when am I going to get to sleep? I work night shifts. I got to rest sometime during the day. So you have to figure out what your own expectations and your own limitations are. Um, now, and there is, of course, biblical reasons for why you want to be generous. But the other thing is uh, I think the last time we had this covenant keepers class, we talked a lot about prosperity gospel or prosperity preachers. Um, yeah, generosity is going to help you out with your life, and if you're a generous person, lots of times you do. We've already said that you don't necessarily always get a reward. Sometimes you do, but prosperity gospel doesn't mean that you give to the church before you take care of yourself. We've said that. And we want to stress that because if your lights are on, what good is it going to do if the church has new carpet? If your lights, if you don't have food in your refrigerator, how are you contributing to the food pantry at the church? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't help take care of the church. They go hand in hand. That's where generosity is reciprocal. That's where you have to take care, you have to be generous to yourself. Uh, I can remember talking to a friend of mine and they said, well, the pastor was saying, his his wife gives to the church all the time and lets me be available to you guys all the time. So you guys need to give back to her. Well, sometimes that's the role of the pastor's wife to me, and other times I was like, well, why were they taking up an offering for her? And they were like, oh, she was going on vacation and she needed to do this, and that. I'm like going, I don't think that's what generosity for the church is supposed to be, or an offering. But again, it's also in your traditions and how you're brought up, and that was not my understanding, but that was her understanding, and she was okay with it. And I was like, okay. So churches have different traditions, is what I'm trying to say, and churches have different expectations of what generosity is. So you have to make yourself comfortable in what your definition of generosity is. I'm getting a face from Minister Ray there. I was like, but so it may not always fit. Your definition of generosity may not always fit all of the circumstances.
Yeah, you're right, Minister Mel. And I think that's where even if you're just coming into a church, that's where your talks with God and your discernment um come into play, and also asking questions. But that's where that comes into play, so that you are not just throwing yourself in, because you're right, you have to. Self-care is very important, and I'm so glad that at here at MCC Baltimore, we, our co-pastors, our pastors teach us about self-care, and that it's okay, because I think sometimes we have grown up where, and I'm not sure who said this, but you were just expected to be at church Sunday, Wednesday, to, like, you were just expected to be there, and it's like, no, sometimes you need to take a step back, and that's okay. Um, because, oops, my phone. You you your generosity it'll be no good, because I know for me, you know, there have been times where you feel like you're not appreciated, or you start to resent some of the things, like, oh, I have to be there every Tuesday, and it's like, you know what, you don't. It's okay, as long as you let someone know it's okay. And I think when you don't give yourself your self-care, and you're being too generous, you can start to have, like you said, get burnt out, start having some resentment, and that's church is not the place for the resentment, especially when sometimes it is due to those unmanageable expectations, where you feel like you have to do everything, and you don't.
And not just for the new people, but even for those of us who have been in the church for a long time, who are in leadership roles. We're even more responsible being in leadership roles for taking care of ourselves than those who are new, because we've been through all of those steps and all of those stages of being a new member and wanting to learn, or being a new member and just sitting back and watching, and then, oh yeah, this is where I really want to be, and joining things. We have to take care of our own selves. Even after you've been there 10 years, you have to take care of your own self. You have to be able to say, I can't do that. Like, I used to be the one there lifting everything. Well, I can't lift everything anymore. I've got a bad back. I have to know what my expectations are, because if I go out and to give you an example, we used to have a Pepsi machine that didn't work. Well, I helped move the Pepsi machine. Well, if I tried to help move the Pepsi machine, now I'd end up on the floor and it would end up on top of me. So that's part of knowing where I can be generous and where I can't be. Because the other thing is being generous and not being able to do it and hurting yourself is not what we want either. We don't want you to be generous and hurt yourself. like I said, I can't lift like I used to. Why would I go to church and lift a whole bunch of stuff and then tomorrow I'm going to be in bed? That's not being generous. That's not being realistic with my generosity. Because now, if I was to participate in something tomorrow for tomorrow's service, I wouldn't be able to. So that's what we're saying when we saying we want you to take care of yourselves. So and there are a lot of ways. We've already said there's time and talent and treasure. So let's talk about we spent a lot of time talking about time. So I want to continue that about generosity of time because sometimes that is just as important as the talent and the treasure, um, especially given what we've been through in the last year. Just your time, just in showing up, being on Facebook. Um, Guys, we would love to have you participate in these discussions. I would love to have someone else here besides Minister Ray, and even some of the newer folks. Yes, Ray, I love you, but Ray is my twin by another mother in a different year. We have the same birthday, so um, but we would love to have new people, different people, in on these panel discussions sometimes. And we're always saying, if you want to join us, please let us know. So, that's time. It doesn't have to be just us up here talking and exchanging ideas. And we need your ideas and we need your time too. We want to see your faces because I had a member hit me up on Facebook and Messenger, and I was just like, wow, I haven't heard from them in ages. Look at that. Oh wow, hey, how you doing? And I got out my phone, and it's in the middle of the day at work, and I'm just going back and forth. But it was great because I haven't been able to see people from church in so long, and most of you aren't getting on Zoom with us, so we still don't get to see you. We see your name, but we don't see you. Come join us on Zoom so we can actually see you. It's so nice. I mean, I can't. I love seeing the ministers. I love seeing Minister Ray and Pastor Pam and Pastor Denise, Minister Lee, Minister Tomas, Minister Angie. But wow, I can't wait to see them in person. I can't wait to get an elbow bump or a hug. It's gonna be so nice. I mean, I wish you could have seen us when we did our fundraiser at Mod Pizza. You'd have thought we were a bunch of little kids. We were just so happy to see each other. Like, hi, how you doing? We were as bad as the kids sitting around. We put out a table and we all sat around just like we were at church. We tried to keep our distance and keep our mask up, but it was really hard because we were just so glad to see each other. And that was being generous with our time. And it was kind of chilly that day. And we still sat there for over an hour because we were just enjoying being there and spending that time together. And sometimes that's what generosity of time is, just being there. You don't necessarily have to do all the time.
I was going to say, Minister Mel, sometimes, given that time, sometimes people just need, an ear, not a gossipy ear, but, an ear, a venting ear sometimes. And I think even with giving of your time when people do attend, Bible study and they get on Zoom, it's that quicker dialogue because sometimes, when we're reading messages, like on Facebook, we think we're getting them across as the person is saying them. And I think we are, but I think it would be so much better if the person said it out their mouth. And then, because sometimes, depending on who sees it, if we even see it, because I know with my Facebook, sometimes I don't see messages,
Right.
in the chat. So sometimes we'll see it and it'll be like kind of after we have not moved on from that point, but we definitely want to respect what that person's comment was. So we'll go back. So it's like, but if you were, if you can be, I know everybody can't be, but if you can be, it's just so great to be a part of the conversation because, you're real time, you're in it, and we can whatever, like what you said might just spark something else in someone else. just maybe in the way you said it. So I definitely encourage everyone, if you can, just be a part of Bible study on Zoom. It is so much fun. It really is. We crack each other up. We're learning, but we're still together. And I know that we have not been in the building in so long, but what I love about MCC Baltimore is we didn't take a break. We jumped right in with Zoom, and I love MCC Baltimore for that. That people still were able to see us that very next Sunday after everything was shut down. But getting back to time, it's just you just don't know what will be sparked inside you when you just give your time and attend some of these things. You just don't know what will be on your mind later on and how much you retain from just being in the moment.
Right. Thank you, Minister Ray. That is so true because, and the other thing is you don't know how much other people appreciate your time, or appreciate you just being there and giving of that. Because it's even just being present is a generous thing in itself. Because, and I'm learning that just being present sometimes is generosity in itself. And we don't often think of it that way. But I work with mentally ill patients, and you'd be surprised. I saw a patient I haven't seen. I saw him this week, and I hadn't seen him for like 4 months. And he was like, "I missed you." And I'm like going, "But you got other people you're working with." I know, but you used to keep your office door open and let us just come in and talk. And I was like going, "Okay, well, they don't do that here." And I was like, "But that was back before COVID and the pandemic. And that was when my office was, when I say it was a closet, I mean, it used to be a closet. Okay. So it was small. And there was enough for two desks, a file cabinet, and an extra chair. And that was as big as, I mean, the guys would go get a chair and pull it up and sit in the doorway to sit there and talk to me. But he remembered me because I gave my time. And at the same time, him remembering me, I appreciated because he was one of those guys when I had him who was really sick and I didn't think I had made an impact. So giving my time had impressed on him that somebody cared. And sometimes that's what generosity of time is just making sure that somebody knows that you care. It sounds like a small thing, but sometimes that's more important than giving that $10 bill that's in your pocket. Um, so I can't stress generosity of time enough, not just for you, but for other people. And Minister Ray is right. We crack ourselves up in Bible study and even in our training classes with the pastors and our group and our meetings when we get together. Our board meetings are supposed to last how long? 2 hours? Have we had a 2 hour one yet? No. Do we get upset about it? Not really. We'd like to get to bed earlier, but we end up, our check-in is supposed to take 15 minutes. Our check-in takes 45 minutes, because it's our time to catch up with each other. And you end up developing a family, but we would love to have more people in our family. That's one thing I will say about MCC Baltimore. The more people we got in our family, the more we like it. And I had a discussion one time with a previous pastor, and they said, "You don't know everybody's name." I looked at him and said, "I know most of them." Well, why? Because that's one thing that I've learned. If you learn people's names, they love that recognition. And that's just a way to be generous, that I've taken the time to learn your name, which leads me up to my next question. You have to ask yourself, am I a generous person? You have to think about that. Am I generous? And I was like thinking, now, am I generous? Let me think about that. I'm generous with this, but oh, I wasn't generous with that the other day. Or, oh, wait a minute, I could have been a little more generous there. So am I generous with my time? Am I generous with my talent? Am I generous with my treasure? Hmm. And guess who's the only person who can answer that question? Yourself. I can't answer it for Minister Ray. She can't answer it for me. I think she is more generous with her time than I am. I know all of the things that she does for the church that you guys don't see. You see what you see on Zoom. I know what she's doing behind the scenes. I know that she goes, what is it, every week or once a month and has a meeting with the school that we're working with now. That she goes up and helps with their food pantry, with their giveaways. That she works at a vaccine clinic and gives her time. Nah, I'm not that generous with my time anymore. I used to do those kind of things.
You
What?
know what, Minister Mel? Yes, I think I'm becoming definitely more generous, within reason, you know. But I think I was definitely, when I was younger, more generous. I think with my treasures, and not using the power of discernment, using the power of discernment to, I was not treated very well by, so people who were friends. If they needed help, I would help them, but I wasn't reciprocated in the way that I thought I should have been. But I had to learn over time and along my walk that, I was reciprocated. I was reciprocated in the fact that when I did not have as much money to give, those people definitely dwindled away, but I was still taken care of, in my home. My bills were still paid. My rent time was still paid. Like things like that. So while that was years removed, I still think I am a generous person. I just don't. I don't think
Mr. Ray froze for a moment. She'll be right back. I promised you this happens on occasion. Um, until she comes back to us, one of the things that
am making you.
there we go.
Yeah, if it's harming you and stressing you out, and you don't know which way is up, then it's time to step back. It's time to step back, and if you have to have that talk with someone, if you have to sit down with the pastors and say what's going on, because like we've talked about unmanageable expectations, you might be just putting too much on yourself and thinking that you have to be, you know, at 100 all the time, and you don't, because Pastor Denise said it the other night about having harmony instead of balance, because balance means you're putting the same amount in each pot, whereas harmony, you might be putting one in one pot and three in another, but you are still getting things done. So I think that was a great what she said the other night, and it makes you really think, because we are expected to be a certain way in the church, in our secular lives, and sometimes you have to step back and really evaluate what you're doing.
Right. I agree with you. That is an excellent point. You are your own self-evaluator. Um, because the other thing is generosity is not inherited. Generosity is a learned behavior. You aren't born. I can remember when babies are born, some people would say, well, if they're born with a closed fist, that means they're always going to be a penny pincher. And if they're born with an open hand, then they're going to be a giver. And I'm like going, well, I don't know how my hand was when I was born. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, this open.
Well, I was. I think when my two were born, they I think all babies' hands are closed because they crying.
Right. So are we all born as penny pinchers? I don't. It's. I think that a lot more behavior is learned than people realize, but it's not necessarily a lesson taught. It's you learn by watching. And I think that our children learn by watching us. I think that other people learn by watching us. Um, and I'm going to have to take it there. One of the I think that generosity is learned. It's a positive behavior that is learned, whereas racism is a negative behavior that is learned. So they're both learned behaviors. They're learned in different ways. They're learned by watching. They're learned by listening. Because I can think about it. I think about it. My whole family is a family of givers to the church. I can't tell you my brother serves on the church council. My sister serves on the church council. I've served on our church board. My wife serves on the church board. My grandfather served on the church council. My other grandfather serves on, and it just goes back on through generations. But it doesn't hurt that I have pastors back in the family for 4 or 5 generations too. But everybody was active. My mother was president of the LCW, which was the Lutheran Church Women's whatever. I can never remember what all those letters were for. And so everybody was active in the church. But the other thing churches were a community center too. Whereas nowadays they've become more spread out as we've gotten our cars. And I'm a prime example. I don't live in Baltimore anymore, but I still say Baltimore is my church. Baltimore is a home for me. I live in West Virginia. I drive over an hour to get to church every day. I know other people who do that to other churches. Um, do I mind? No. I go where I want to go to church. I go where I'm most comfortable. And to me, that's not being generous with my time that I drive. That's doing what I'm doing to take care of me. But generosity is learned. And so I learned to be generous with my time to the church by watching all of my family. So the other catch is I think that members who have never given of their time a lot to the church are going to learn. The other thing is they're going to learn to take care of themselves too by watching the leaders. And I think leaders have a bigger responsibility when it comes to generosity than what we even realize because the people learn from us. And if the leaders don't give of themselves, of their time, their talent, and their treasures, and give responsibly, and that's the big key to generosity. You have to do it responsibly, and that means taking care of yourselves as well as taking care of others. Because generosity is, um, we're so learned. We're. I was taught to give, and at one point I gave so much I didn't have any left in my tank. There was nothing left for me, and I was like, I can't pay the gas and electric bill because I gave somebody else money for food, and now I don't have my gas and electric. My gas and electric bill is only $55, but I gave that $55 I was supposed to put there to them. Uh, oh, that wasn't good. Or wait a minute, I can remember making sure that I had my 10% for the church, but because I had a lot of people in my house, my food bill was a lot higher. But I made sure I had my 10%, but I had enough food for everybody else, but didn't have food for me. Or I didn't have bus fare because I didn't have a car. So I had to walk to where I didn't have to transfer buses because I didn't have the money to pay for the transfer pass. So is that being responsible with my generosity? Was that being responsible with my treasure? And those are the kind of things that we want you to consider yes, we'd love for everybody in the church to give their tithes. I'm not gonna tell that lie. But how can you give your tithe if you can't get to work, or if you can't feed yourself, or if the winter when it got down to 6 degrees outside and you didn't have the heat on? That's not generosity. That's irresponsibility. And there's a difference. And I think that's what we're trying to say in this covenant. That yes, we want you to keep the covenant of generosity with the church once you become a member, but you have to do it with responsibility. And I see Minister Ray nodding her head, so I think
Yeah,
she agrees with
yeah,
me.
I do. And I think, when it gets to that point, that's when those conversations and those prayers and, asking for your next steps come into play. We should be in prayer, but never to a point like we keep honing in, never to a point where you are harming yourself spiritually and financially, and physically even, as far as doing too much, like you the analogy with the Pepsi machine. You moving those boxes is not what 20 years ago maybe, but not now. I was telling somebody yesterday, I used to move copier paper boxes for my job when I was in my early 20s. You couldn't catch me. No, not no, no.
Look,
So
they laugh at me at work because now when I got to get a box of copier paper, I take my chair because it's on wheels. I put it on the chair and I wheel it down the hall to where the copier is, and they're laughing at me, and I'm like, I'm not breaking my back anymore.
exactly. So just but see, so your analogy is that you are not putting everything on yourself. You're using something else. So that means that, if we're in the church, you are asking another member, another minister, another leader for help. The chair is your leader. It's
Right.
helping you carry the box. So everyone use that analogy.
And that's the other thing. Generosity does not mean you have to do it by yourself. And I think that's the point Minister Ray was trying to get. The generosity doesn't say that I'm alone in this and it's just me. Generosity could be you going and saying, hey, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do this. So can you help me figure it out? Or generosity could be um, just sitting there and saying, oh, look, they're doing such and such. Let me go help them. And that's what generosity is. It's a let me go help them. It's not necessarily I got to do it by myself. And I think that's one of the things we forget sometimes, that it's not always just you individually. Sometimes it's you with one person, two people, three people, um, six people, and it doesn't have to be a give and take. Sometimes it's just a let's get it done. Sometimes it's well, oh, hmm, I never thought of that way. And how many times in our discussions have we had to look at things in another way? And that's what we're trying to get you to see, that generosity can be looked at in several different ways. Um, and it doesn't, you saying that I can't do it alone or you saying that I can't do doesn't diminish you as a person. It doesn't make you any less or any smaller, or because I can remember the first time I said no to somebody at church and they looked at me like, you said no? What do you mean no? You never say no. And I'm like going, well, why can't I say no? Because you never say no. Well, then maybe I wasn't being fair to you. Because the other catch is, if you're the person who always does, How is somebody else going to learn to do what you do? So generosity sometimes can be saying no and stepping back. It doesn't necessarily mean stepping away. It means stepping back because I want it to continue. If I want it to continue, it can't be just me. I have to be able to teach the next person. And our pastors stress that all the time, that as you go up a step, someone else goes up a step. So that means that you have to show, if I move on to step 3, then I have to show somebody else how to get to step 2. And as they get to step 2, they're helping somebody else take step 1. But guess what? That doesn't mean because I'm at step 3 that I can't go back and help that person at step 1 either. That's all a part of generosity too. Generosity is teaching others too. Because if I don't teach somebody else, I'm not going to do well because I mean they're not going to learn. I mean, I'm going to give you a prime example. And this goes back to when I was a kid. I didn't necessarily look forward to Saturday mornings because everybody thought that was cartoon time. That wasn't cartoon time at the Ludy household. That was cleanup time. You learn to mop the floors, you learn to dust the furniture, you learn to vacuum, you learn to put in the window screens because in the old windows, you didn't have these nice little windows like you do now. You had to take them in and out. That was learning time. And I can remember thinking, I don't want to learn to put things away. I don't want to learn to hang up my clothes. I don't want to learn all these things. But now when I look around my house and I'm like, I really like having clean floors and having a nice made up bed and clean sheets on my bed. My mother took the time to teach me. So she was being generous in teaching me because now as an adult, you can look at my house and say, I got a place where people can come visit. Yay me. You may not want to come visit if you're allergic to cats or dogs because I do have fur babies, but you know, it's it's different because and we don't think about that, but those things that we considered chores were actually our parents being generous with their time. So what happens if I'm the person who always comes and cleans the church? And what happens if I go out tomorrow and have a heart attack? Who's going to know how to clean a church? Who's going to know where the cleaning supplies are? Who's going to know what cleaning supplies we use? Who's going to know when the trash goes out? Who's going to know when the recycle goes out? So we can't be silos. We have to be generous. We have to teach others. And I think we've learned that over this last year because I used to say I was technologically stupid. I knew how to get into my email and I thought I was doing good. If you'd have told me that I could get on Zoom, transfer it to Facebook, and now I know how to transfer this from Facebook to YouTube, I'm not as technologically stupid as I thought I was because somebody was generous enough to teach me that. And I'm like going, that's generosity in a different way. So I think the biggest thing that Minister Ray and I want everybody to grasp is that generosity is different than what we were taught. It doesn't always have to do with money. It's time, but it's not just doing. You don't have to be the doer all the time. Sometimes it's let me show you how I did this. I watched one of my coworkers take a printer apart this week, and I'm like sitting there going, Why are you doing that? Oh, because I like doing these things. Well, guess what? The printer works now. When our IT department couldn't get it to work because she took the time to sit there, and I mean, she cleaned out all the little cartridges and the whole little thing, and I'm like going, didn't you have other things to do with your time? Yeah, but I needed this printer to work because it prints in color. I'm like going, okay, better you than me because I ain't gonna do all that. Mm-mm. And sometimes you have to decide what you're going to be generous with and how you're going to be generous with it. Um, and that goes back to we yeah, I want you to prosper, but I'm not going to preach the prosperity gospel to you. I'm not going to say you have to give because you're going to get it back. Because generosity isn't always reciprocal. And it's really funny because my little paper says that there are stages to generosity. And it says the first stage is receiving and accepting. So guess what? If you don't know how to receive generously, how are you going to give generously? And we as leaders, I'm going to tell you, we especially have a hard time doing that. We have a hard time receiving from other people. And we've seen that. And I love Latanya's giving us hand claps for some of the things we said. So I want to thank you for that. I want to acknowledge that. It's nice to know that someone is listening to us. But we have to be able to receive as well as give. And most generous people are terrible receivers. So how can we be a good, generous person if we can't receive? If you can't receive a compliment, I can remember, and I was an adult, and people would look at me and say, "Can't you just say thank you?" And I'm like going, "Oh, you know what? That wasn't really generous of me because they would be like, "That's a really nice shirt," instead of just saying, "Oh, thank you." I would say, "Oh, it just came from Walmart." Why didn't I just say thank you? They didn't like that a whole lot better than me saying, I just went to Walmart. And I've had to look at things differently. And I mean, this is within like the last 5 or 6 years that I've had to be like, oh, wait a minute. That's a lot easier just to say thank you. So when it comes to generosity, you can be learning about it all the time because I could give, but I couldn't receive it. Well, how can I be generous if I can't do a little thing like receive a compliment? Oh, so now I'm telling you, guess what? If you want to be a generous person, you have to learn how to accept generosity too. And you're like going, huh? Yep. You got to do both. Now, stage 2 is growing and investing. And I'm like going, huh? How do I grow and and it's really funny because they talk about the parable of the talents here, Minister Ray. And how many times have we learned about that one this week where there were the two servants who went out and they invested their money and they made more. The one doubled, the one just got a little bit more, and there was the third one who just buried it in the ground. Who got the rewards? Those who invested, those who made it grow. So your rewards come from making it grow, from not hiding it in the ground. Okay, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I got to make it grow. So I got to keep working on this stuff, but I'm already a generous person. Now you're telling me I got. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. So third stage is returning and restoring, and I think we've spent a lot of time talking about that, about self care, about you have to be generous with yourself, and the other catch is in that parable that I was talking about, in the parable with the talents. They brought everything back. They brought everything back to the master. They brought everything back and said, look, this is the 10 you gave me. Here's the 10 I earned. This is the 5 you gave me. This is the 5 I earned. And the third guy just came back with his little 2 talents, and the master said, "Bye, go away." So that in itself is a gift, is returning what you got and returning that investment. And I'm like thinking, okay. And I think as you get older, sometimes you reflect on that a little bit more, or given the stage that you're in, because um, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the things that my mother's ill, and I spent a lot of time thinking about the things that she's taught me in my life recently, because I know that she's getting close to the end of her life, and I'm thinking about, I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that time and those talks, and wow, she so. And the other catch is returning and restoring doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to go back to the person that you give. But then I'm thinking about, you know what? I'm returning now a lot of the things that she taught to me back to her, because when I was younger, she used to take the time to listen to me, and now I'm having to take the time to listen to her and to answer her questions and to explain things to her. And I never thought it would be that way. And we all say our parents, no, our parents don't return to their childhood. They just have different questions than what they had before. And I'm thinking, well, someday my daughter's going to have to be that way with me. Wow, life is different. Generosity comes at us in different ways as we go through our lives too. So the generosity, and Minister Ray and I have both talked about the generosity that we did 20 years ago. We don't do now. We do it in a different way. So in the last stage is being generous and giving, and being that generous person and exhibiting your generosity. Yes, we want you to give of your treasure to the church. We want you to give your time. We want you to give your talent. I'm going to tell you that to me, one of the most amazing and the most beautiful ministries we have right now is our Hands of Praise, because that is being generous in a way that most people and a lot of churches aren't. The fact that we have individuals who have taken the time and who are taking the time to learn, and sign language is just that, a language, a whole nother language to work with people. And we can display it even on our Zoom. It's something that we can share in our Zoom and in our worship service that a lot of churches don't have. It's becoming more and more a part of our society so that we can include the deaf community more in society. So that's being generous, even. That's taking care of others. Um, so generosity isn't just that money that you give to pay the light bills or the pastor's salary or to pay the guy who cleans the carpet. And generosity isn't just standing up there and sharing your talent. And, generosity could be working with the kids to teach them how to write spoken word. Because, yes, some people have that innate gift, but at the same time, there are certain skills that you have to learn to be able to do that. Um, Generosity can be just sitting down and being that ear. How many times have you seen pastors after service are there for 2 and 3 hours because they're listening to the members talk? Or have you even seen the leadership of the church be there for a while after Sunday because somebody just wanted to talk and they wanted to talk to one of the leaders? I can remember being one of those members who just wanted to talk to one of the leaders, and they took the time for me. So now I want to take the time for others. Um, there's so many different ways to give and to be generous and to pass it along that we don't think about it. And yeah, I would like you to give your 10%. I'm not going to lie. I know Minister Ray would, being on the board of directors and making it easier to pay those bills. I've been in her seat. But there are so many ways to be generous, and that's what we want from new members and people who join our church and from the people who are already there. Um, you know, generosity is going to be different for different people. It's going to be different based on the stage you are in your life. It's just, it's a whole discussion to me. And this is the one covenant that we give the whole hour and a half to, just this one covenant, and like the others where we group them, because it's so important. It's so important that you grasp the fact that being generous is different than what you necessarily thought it was. Mr. Ray, I've been rattling for the last 10 minutes. You got anything to add?
You're exactly right. We've kind of gone over these points. Be generous. Be generous, but also have self care. I think that's like the takeaway. You be generous with your time, your talent, and your treasures, and do it. Do it from your heart. And if you start to feel, because you might have pushed yourself into doing too many things, too many pots, taking that step back and asking for help from the leaders, in prayer and meditation. And after you've done all those things, definitely taking time for self-care. So you can be as generous as you can be, and also, but being generous is not realizing that you might not get that tangible return, but you will get a return in your bless, like I said, in your blessings, where you least expect it. Because how do you know that being that ear for someone might spark something in them where they let someone else know, hey, this person might be good for doing this. I know someone at church is a really good listener. Maybe they can help you with XYZ. So you never know what, even in your generosity, what doors it might open for you, which is, your reward that you weren't expecting.
That's an excellent point. And the other thing is um, generosity does not necessarily give you a reward, but it's a reward in a different way. It's not an immediate, for every dollar you get, you're not going to get $2 back. For every dollar you give, you're not going to get $5 back. You're going to get something back in a different way. Sometimes generosity is going to give you something of the heart. Um, like I said, we had to put one of our animals to sleep this week, and the 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 sympathy that was expressed and the hugs that we were given, the virtual hugs on Facebook and things, and um, from friends and family, and even at work, you know, people were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but that's something that you get when you give, because when you give of yourselves and people know that you give, then they know how your heart is. And I think that's the biggest thing we're trying to stress, that generosity is a heart matter. And you have to, I love what Minister Ray said, when you have to discern what is right for you. You have to pray about what is right for you. You have to ask God. You have to ask yourself. You have to consider how you're going to be generous when you are generous, because um, it's it's a learned behavior, yes, but it's also something we want you to be able to do 20 years from now and enjoy doing it. Because if I give and give and give and give, and after a while, am I just giving because that's what I'm supposed to do? Or am I giving because I enjoy doing it? And if I don't enjoy doing it, then why am I doing it? And I think that's what we've been trying to say too, because we're saying, you have to take care of yourself. You have to consider what you're doing. But you need to do it. And I always thought this was the dumbest thing. You need to do it with a joyful heart, but you do. You need to be happy when you do it. I mean, I'm not trying to be trivial with it or anything like that, but if you're not happy doing it, then you have to ask yourself, is this where I'm supposed to be generous? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Um, is this where I'm supposed to be at this point in time? Now, the other catch is I may be generous in that area this time because I'm not called to be there this time, but the next time I may be generous in that area. Like, I may not be called to come clean the church this time, the next time I may be. Or maybe I'm called this time so that I can show somebody what I'm doing to straighten out this area. And so that it stays this way from now on, so that I'm not the only one coming in cleaning up. Like, we have a garage that we call it the garage. It's really a storage area at church. I can't tell you how many times I've helped clean it out. Well, maybe if a whole bunch of us clean it out together and learn how to do it together, then we'll all work at keeping it that way. Would that be more generous than us going in and cleaning it up? One person going in and cleaning it up, and then, oh, a year later we go back and clean it up again, but everybody else just plops in whatever they got and we just keep on moving. Let's be more generous with our time, okay? Let's clean it up together. Then we can all agree this is how we like it. We're going to work at it together to keep it this way. So generosity, again, is learned. It's discerned, because you can't be generous the same way all the time. You can't, like, I can't give them my money all the time. I might have a bill I have to pay this week, so I can't give what I would normally give. But okay, well, maybe the next week or maybe 2 months down the road, I got all those bills taken care of, and now I got extra money in my pocket. So maybe I want to give a little extra this time around. Maybe I can increase what I'm giving. The other thing is that you can't get, most people aren't able to give their 10%, aren't able to give a 10% tithe right away. They have to build up to it. And I think about that because, like, when my wife and I, when we bought our house, we had to cut back on what we give because our mortgage was a lot more than what our rent was. And so we had to learn where to spend our money and what to do with it. And now that we've learned, we actually are now giving more to the church than what we did before we bought the house, even because we've learned where to place our money, what to do with it. We've grown along the way. And so now we can give more than we were before, even. But yeah, so what am I saying? Sometimes you have to cut back to learn so that you can give more later on. That's why we're saying it's a learned behavior. I'm not expecting anybody who comes into this church brand new to be able to give a tithe of 10% right away. Okay? Because it's a learned behavior. And if you got a paycheck and you're starting out and you're in your first apartment and you've got, or you're still living with mom and dad, but now all of a sudden you've got a car and you never had a car before, that's a lot of responsibility because now you have to put gas in it. Oops, wait a minute, you got to check the oil. Now you got to change the oil every 5,000 miles. You got to check on the tires. You got to wash it. You got to keep it clean because you don't want the dirtiest car on the road. Oh, wait a minute. Look at where my money's going now. You have to make decisions about what you're going to do with your funding and where it's going to go. You have to think about it. You have to pray about it. Because the other thing is, maybe you bought that car so that you could get to that better job, so that you could give back more. But you have to learn how to manage the funding for that car before you can give more. So it's all, sometimes it's going to be small steps backwards and small steps forwards. Sometimes it's going to be big steps backwards to get bigger steps forwards. It's a learning process. Mr. Ray, anything else?
Nope, you have summed it up perfectly. I mean, it's definitely a process, and don't don't feel bad about where you are in the process, because if you keep on with the process, you will be able to give more of whichever part that you feel you may be lacking. You will. You just have to, like you said, with your home. You guys had to figure out where your money was going. And sometimes, when you realize that you're getting that coffee that's $5 a day, that's $5 that could be going towards your ties. So it's just whatever you're comfortable doing, and but that's where you take it to prayer, and you have that talk with your creator, and you'll do the best thing.
Right. Um, and you have to have that talk with the creator. You have to talk with when you have family and a spouse. You have to have that talk with them. It's it's not when other people are involved. You have to also consider them. Um, and I think that's what we're saying, that it's not, you're not in this alone. And the other thing is if you don't know and if you don't understand, you can talk to the leaders at the church. You can talk to the pastors. We will gladly help you. I'm not going to sit down and show you how to do it all financially because I'm not good with that. I can keep a book. I can keep your records straight. I can't tell you how to plan it. Okay? I've had to work on myself to learn that. So the other thing is don't think that, yes, we want you to ask God what to do with it, but don't think that God's not going to give you people to help you with it too. Okay? God will place someone in your heart. If you don't understand how to make a budget, God's going to give somebody to help you make that budget so that you can give like you think you should give. The other thing is don't put an unmanageable expectation on yourself. We talked about that, and you can free yourself from that chain. Don't think that I have to get. Don't think I have to give my 10% to the church. I have to do it now. You don't. I'm not going to tell you that. It would be wonderful, but you don't. Generosity is a learning process. It's a growing process. You're going to be growing in it all the time. I'm much older than Minister Ray, and I'm still growing in it. Okay, I'm still learning in it. I'm learning to say no. I'm learning to accept. I'm even learning to be a better giver. Okay, so it's a growing process. It's a discerning process, and it's a learning process. Um, so we hope that this discussion helped you with the covenant of generosity. I want to thank Minister Ray for joining me today and even giving me some things to think about. And we want to thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you learned something. So now, a few announcements. We hope that you'll join us for service tomorrow morning. We start at 10 o'clock. We have prayer before, and you'll also see our announcement slides before. Join us this coming week for Monday, Thursday service. We will have we are joining the T-Fam family for our Good Friday service. And of course, we will have Resurrection Sunday service. And my wife reminded me this morning, and I have my little picture right here. Wait a minute, I'm going to show you guys. See, I have my Hosanna. Oops, upside down. There we go. To take my picture to send it in to communications@mccbaltimore.org so that we can celebrate Palm Sunday virtually. And see, I even made different ones because I don't know which one I like the best. Okay, you can find them online and print them out. So that way you can become a part of our service. And that is the generosity of time by being just even taking your picture and sending it in. So we hope to see you and we thank you for joining us. And now I'll give us a brief prayer out and then we'll say goodbye. So please pray with me. Heavenly Parent, we thank you. We thank you for this time to talk about generosity. We thank you for this time of learning and sharing, of growing and giving. We thank you for Minister Ray's time of joining me this morning, for the generosity that she has given me and the blessing that she has given me. And now we ask that as we leave, you continue to allow us to bless and grow and be with you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, everybody. Goodbye.